Millionaire agrees to marry an obese woman to win a bet. But on the wedding day, something unexpected happens that will leave everyone surprised. Will Harper was in his luxurious apartment in London, the afternoon sun filtering through large windows that offered a stunning view of the city. The room was filled with laughter and loud music. His friends, many of whom were executives like him, were celebrating yet another business achievement. Will stood out in the crowd, exuding a confidence that bordered on arrogance. He wore a designer suit that accentuated his striking features and flashed a smile that could melt hearts, but in truth, hid a lack of humanity that few could perceive. "You're the king of the world, Will," exclaimed Oliver Ollie Thompson, his best friend, raising a glass of champagne in a toast. "I bet you could win over any woman in this room with just a glance." Will laughed, the sound echoing through the room. "Any woman? Please, Ollie. There's no challenge I can't take on." He turned towards a group of women chatting animatedly, winking at one of them. "But let's be honest, beauty is just skin deep." Ollie, always the provocateur, grinned with a mischievous glint in his eyes. "How about a real challenge then? What if you married an ordinary woman? One who doesn't fit your standards of perfection? I bet you wouldn't have the guts." Will raised an eyebrow, the challenge igniting his competitive spirit. "You really think I couldn't do it? That I couldn't win over a common woman?" He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms, a defiant smile on his lips. "I accept the bet. I'll marry the first woman I find in line at the supermarket." Ollie laughed, the absurdity of the idea fueling his imagination. "You don't have to go that far. How about just a woman everyone considers unattractive? You know, someone who doesn't fit the beauty stereotype." "Unattractive?" Will pondered, imagining the possibilities. "This will be easy. I'll prove that I can win over any woman, no matter how she looks." As the conversation continued, Will's attention shifted to a chef being mentioned in a nearby chat. Her name was Emma Wright, and the way they spoke about her piqued his curiosity. She was a woman who dedicated her life to cooking, but, according to societal standards, didn't fit conventional notions of beauty, which, for Will, could be an advantage. As the party progressed, the image of Emma began to form in his mind. He knew nothing about her, but the idea of conquering someone society deemed ordinary and unattractive ignited a competitive fire within him. "I'm going to marry this Emma," he thought, a satisfied smile spreading across his lips. That same night, the scene shifted to a cozy kitchen, where Emma Wright was surrounded by pots and fresh ingredients. Her energy was contagious, and she chatted animatedly with Lottie, her best friend and confidant. "Sometimes I feel like I'm fighting against a sea of expectations," Emma confessed while chopping onions. "People look at me and only see the surface. They don't understand the passion I have for cooking." Lottie smiled, trying to comfort her. "Emma, you're amazing just the way you are. Your talent and your heart are what really matter. Don't worry about what others think." Emma sighed, her gaze lost in thought. "I know, but the pressure can be overwhelming. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever be seen as more than just a common chef." Lottie, sensing her friend's insecurity, decided to change the subject. "Let's have some fun, shall we? Put those worries aside for one night." Meanwhile, in his apartment, Will was just beginning to realize that his bet wouldn't be as simple as he had imagined. He was about to enter a world that would challenge not only his beliefs about beauty, but also his notions of love and vulnerability. And so, Will and Emma's lives were about to intertwine in a way neither of them could foresee. The charity event was one of the most talked about social gatherings in London, bringing together the elite in an atmosphere of glamour and pomp. Will Harper, still immersed in his world of business and wealth, was surrounded by friends and admirers, exuding confidence as always. Dressed in a tailored suit, he moved among the guests with the ease of someone used to being the center of attention. However, something in his gaze betrayed a latent dissatisfaction, a search for something deeper than the superficialities of his life. Meanwhile, Emma Wright was in the kitchen of the event, busy preparing the dishes that would be served to the guests. Dressed in an apron, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, she radiated an authenticity that Will had never encountered before. The aroma of spices and the clinking of utensils created a vibrant atmosphere around her, and she dedicated herself to every detail with contagious passion. Lottie, her best friend and confidant, watched Emma with a look of concern. "Are you sure you're ready for this, Emma?" Lottie asked, as she helped arrange some ingredients on the counter. "This kind of event can be overwhelming." Emma smiled, but her insecurity was palpable. "I know, Lottie, but I love cooking. If even one person appreciates what I do, it will be worth it. In the ballroom, Will spotted Emma for the first time. He was intrigued by the woman who appeared so at ease amidst the chaos of the event. Something about how she moved and interacted with others sparked an unexpected curiosity in him. He decided to approach her, convinced he could win her over with his usual charm. "May I ask what you're preparing?" "It looks delicious," he said, getting closer to the counter. The confident smile was plastered on his face. Emma looked up, surprised to find one of the most influential men in the city standing before her. "It's just a simple recipe. Nothing fancy," she replied, trying to hide her shyness. "I'm making mushroom risotto." "Yes, but what type of mushrooms? You know that the choice of ingredients is what makes the difference, right?" Will insisted, trying to impress her with his culinary knowledge. She raised an eyebrow, a playful smile on her lips. "Are you trying to impress me with your knowledge of food, Mr. Harper?" "Sorry, but that's not going to work." Will was taken aback by her direct response. "I like challenges, Emma. And you seem to be a woman who isn't afraid to assert herself." Emma crossed her arms, assessing him. "And you are a man used to getting what he wants, aren't you? But there's a difference between challenges and games, and I'm not here to be a part of any of them." Frustration began to rise within Will. He wasn't accustomed to being rejected, and even more so, he was intrigued by her determination. "So tell me, what do you want, Emma? What would make you interested in a man like me?" "A man who isn't just interested in looking perfect or showing off," she replied, looking him in the eyes. "I want someone who can be vulnerable, who understands that beauty goes beyond appearance." As the conversation continued, flashbacks started flooding Will's mind. He saw himself as a child, striving to please his parents, always pressured to be the best at everything. The memory of moments of loneliness and pressure made him realize that behind the facade of confidence, there was a man who felt lost. "You don't have to worry about appearances, Will," Emma said, as if she had read his thoughts. "Authenticity is what really matters." "You talk as if you know everything about me," he replied a bit defensively. "Maybe I know a little more than you think," she said, winking. "But don't worry, I'm not here to judge, just to cook." With that, Will realized there was something extraordinary about Emma. She didn't let his status or fame intimidate her. Meanwhile, the memories of his childhood, of expectations and loneliness, made him question whether he truly knew what love was. The connection between them was undeniable, but Will was about to enter a game much more complex than he had imagined. Will started visiting Emma's restaurant almost every day. The first time he walked into that cozy space, it felt like a new dimension had opened up for him. The walls were adorned with photos of colorful dishes, and the aroma of spices danced in the air, enveloping him in a warm and vibrant atmosphere. He watched Emma from the kitchen, where she moved with natural grace, her skillful hands transforming simple ingredients into culinary masterpieces. There was something fascinating about how dedicated she was, as if every dish she prepared told a story. One afternoon, as Emma was behind the counter, Will approached, trying to disguise the growing admiration he felt for her. "Hi, Emma. Do you have something special on the menu today?" he asked, attempting to sound casual. She looked at him, a smile lighting up the room. "Today, I'm making lemon risotto with fresh herbs. It's one of my favorites. Want to give it a try?" "Of course, I'm curious to see how a chef like you can make something so simple seem extraordinary," Will replied with a smile, admiring how she lit up while talking about food. As Emma moved away to prepare the dish, Will observed her every move. She chatted with customers, laughed, and shared cooking tips, fully living in the moment. He felt a wave of emotion sweep through his chest, something he had never experienced before. It wasn't just physical attraction that drew him in, but the passion and authenticity Emma exuded. He began to realize there was so much more to her than the superficiality he had come to value. Later that week, during a dinner at the restaurant, Will decided it was time to open up. He sat at Emma's table and after a moment of hesitation said, "You know, I really admire what you do here. It's inspiring to see someone so dedicated to what they love." Emma looked at him with a surprised expression. "Thank you, Will. That means a lot to me. Cooking is a form of expression and a way to connect people. I understand. Sometimes I feel like I'm in a constant game of appearances in my world," he replied, revealing a fraction of his vulnerability. "But here, I feel like I can be myself." Emma smiled, but there was a shadow of doubt in her eyes. "Being yourself is important, Will. Life is too short to hide behind masks." The conversation flowed, and the connection between them deepened with every exchanged word. Will began to open up more, sharing stories from his childhood and the pressures he faced to be perfect. Emma, in turn, shared her insecurities and how she always felt inadequate in the face of society's beauty standards. "Sometimes I feel like people only see the surface and can't see who I really am," Emma confessed, looking down. "I feel like I'll never measure up to expectations. Emma, you're amazing just the way you are. True beauty comes from within, and you have that in spades," Will said, taking her hand and looking into her eyes. In that moment he realized he was falling for her, and that scared him. Meanwhile, outside, Lottie, Emma's best friend, watched from a distance. Her expression was one of concern. She knew Will was a complicated man and that behind his charm and captivating smile could lie less noble intentions. After dinner, Lottie approached Emma with a serious look. "You're getting involved with him, aren't you?" Lottie asked, her voice low and cautious. Emma hesitated, recognizing her friend's worry. "He's different, Lottie. He's not like I thought he'd be. He has a depth I didn't expect. But he's a millionaire, Emma. Aren't you worried he's just playing around?" Lottie questioned, concern evident in her tone. "No, I feel there's something real between us. He sees me, Lottie. It's not just about looks," Emma replied, determined but also a little insecure. Lottie sighed but said no more. She was torn between protecting her friend and accepting that maybe, just maybe, Will was truly different. Emma, on the other hand, was in a moment of discovery, diving into a world where what mattered wasn't appearance, but authenticity and genuine connection. And in that moment, Emma began to believe there could be something true between her and Will, something that could transcend the game he had entered into. What once seemed like a simple challenge was evolving into something deeper and more meaningful. Will found himself at an emotional crossroads. Over the past few days, he had noticed a transformation within himself that he had never imagined would occur. The bet with Ollie, which initially seemed like a mere prank, now weighed on his mind like a burden. He watched Emma, so dedicated and passionate about her cooking, and felt a warmth in his chest that challenged his arrogant nature. It was undeniable. He was falling for her. However, the guilt from the bet he had made began to gnaw at his conscience. Meanwhile, Emma remained completely unaware of the game that Will and Ollie had set up. To her, Will was a fascinating man, someone who seemed capable of understanding her love for gastronomy. In their conversations, she felt alive, as if she could explore every corner of her soul, but a shadow of insecurity followed her, especially when she thought about Will's past. He was a millionaire, a public figure, someone with a world of glamour and expectations surrounding him. He must have so many options, she murmured to Lottie, her best friend and confidant. "Emma, you are amazing in your own way. Don't forget that," Lottie replied, trying to comfort her. "Just because he's rich doesn't mean he can't be interested in you. Sometimes the simplest people have the most genuine hearts." However, Emma's insecurity persisted. One night, while serving dishes in her restaurant, she noticed Will among the customers watching her intently. He seemed fascinated, but what Emma didn't know was that he was also battling his own demons. Will recalled the conversation he had with Ollie when his friend teased him about the transformation happening within him. "Are you really going to let yourself get carried away by this?" Ollie had asked with a mischievous smile. "Or are you just playing around?" "I'm not playing around, Ollie," Will replied, his voice laden with a sincerity he barely recognized. "I never thought I could care so much." Nonetheless, Ollie's words echoed in his mind, especially when he saw Emma with a sparkle in her eyes pouring herself into her work. She deserves more than a bet, he thought, the weight of his decision pressing down on his shoulders. Meanwhile, Emma was in the kitchen, laughing at a joke Lottie had made over the phone. "You should have seen Will's face when he tried my risotto. He was so surprised. I never thought someone like him would appreciate something so simple," Emma said, her voice radiant. "You know you are so much more than something simple, right?" Lottie replied, her concern growing. "Just be careful, okay? What does he really want?" "He's different, Lottie. I feel it," Emma insisted, but a part of her began to doubt. One night, while preparing a new recipe, she decided to ask Will directly about his life. "Will, you never talk about your past. What was it like growing up in that world of wealth?" Will hesitated. Her question caught him off guard. He didn't want to reveal the truth, but at the same time, Emma's vulnerability made him feel the need to open up. "I always felt I had to be perfect. The pressure was immense. I didn't have many real friends. Everything was superficial," he confessed, looking at the floor. "That must have been hard," Emma replied empathetically. "No one should have to feel that way." "And you?" "What's it like living with that passion for cooking?" Will asked, trying to change the subject, but Emma noticed he was evading. "It's all I've ever wanted. But sometimes I wonder if I'm good enough. You know, people have so many expectations," she said, her voice filled with insecurity. "Emma, you're amazing. Your dishes are more than just food. They have soul," Will insisted, yet a shadow of doubt lingered between them. And so, as their relationship deepened, the seed of insecurity and doubt began to germinate, setting the stage for the storm that was to come. Emma sat on one of the park benches, watching the leaves slowly fall from the trees. Autumn brought a melancholic beauty, contrasting with the storm of emotions that plagued her. The sun hid behind clouds, reflecting her internal confusion. Since she started dating Will, her life felt like a whirlwind of intense feelings. On one hand, there was the joy of having found someone who made her laugh and dream, but on the other, the shadow of uncertainty and insecurity loomed over her like a dark cloud. She pulled her phone from her pocket and looked at the screen, hesitating. Should she send a message to Will? The last time they saw each other, he had left her confused with his charm and teasing manner, but there was also something that made her question whether he was truly sincere. Emma recalled the conversation she had with Lottie days earlier, when her friend expressed concern about Will's superficial nature. "Emma, you know he's a millionaire, right? What does he really want with you?" Lottie's words echoed in her mind, making her feel like a pawn in a chess game with unknown rules. "I can't keep going like this," she murmured to herself, taking a deep breath. "I need clarity." Meanwhile, Will was in his apartment, surrounded by uncomfortable silence. He looked out the window, contemplating the city that never sleeps. A millionaire's life felt empty without Emma by his side. What had started as a challenge had turned into something much more significant, something he never expected when he entered this bet. He remembered all the laughter, the knowing glances, and even the small arguments they had. "What have I done?" he thought, distressed. The weight of guilt began to settle in his chest. Soon Ollie entered the apartment, noticing Will's worried expression. "Hey man, you don't look like yourself. What's going on?" He plopped down on one of the sofas, observing his friend with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Emma, I think I'm losing her," Will confessed, his voice wavering. "That bet? I thought I could just win her heart, but now I can't imagine my life without her." Ollie frowned, feeling guilty for everything he had contributed to. "Look, Will, I didn't know you really cared about her. To me, it all seemed like a joke. It was a joke until I got to know Emma for real. She's amazing, Ollie. She makes me want to be a better person, and now I don't know how to fix things." Will was visibly distressed, his hands shaking as he spoke. "I can't just let her go like this." Ollie, sensing the gravity of the situation, decided he needed to help. "Then do something. Talk to her. Be honest, Will. Tell her the bet was a mistake and that you truly love her." Will shook his head, his mind filled with doubts. "What if she doesn't believe me? What if everything I've done until now was in vain?" "You'll never know the answer if you don't try," Ollie said, placing a reassuring hand on his friend's shoulder. "You have to take the risk, man. If you love her, you must fight for her." Free. With a new look of determination, Will decided that he could not let fear paralyze him. He needed to find Emma and speak the truth no matter what happened. Love was worth the risk. Meanwhile, Emma was still sitting in the park, lost in her thoughts. What to do? The social pressure, the insecurities, all of it felt like a heavy burden on her shoulders. When she finally decided she needed to confront Will, something inside her ignited. If he truly loved her, she was willing to hear the truth. And who knows, she might discover that their love was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. With this new resolution, she stood up and began walking toward the restaurant where they used to meet, her heart racing with each step. Will was in his luxurious apartment, surrounded by the opulence that had always accompanied him. But that morning, the wealth of his possessions made no sense. He looked at himself in the mirror, adjusting his tie with trembling hands, and the reflection staring back at him felt more like a stranger than himself. "What am I doing?" he murmured to himself, his voice heavy with insecurity. There was something deeper at stake than just a ceremony. The truth he had hidden like a dark secret weighed heavily on his heart. Meanwhile, Emma was preparing for the big day. She was in her small apartment, surrounded by pots and fresh ingredients, the smell of fresh herbs and spices filling the air. Lottie, her best friend, was helping her get ready. "You look beautiful, Emma, and he's an idiot if he doesn't see that," Lottie said as she adjusted the veil over Emma's chestnut hair. The chef looked in the mirror, but her confidence wavered. "What if he's not being sincere? What if it's all just a bet?" she questioned, concern evident in her eyes. Emma, you can't think like that. The Will I know may be a bit arrogant, but he really likes you, Lottie replied, trying to inspire courage in her friend. Emma sighed, the memory of the laughter and moments shared with Will bringing a hesitant smile. Maybe you're right, but what if I'm just deluding myself? The tone of her voice betrayed a mix of hope and fear. You need to follow your heart. If you love him, don't let fear stop you, Lottie insisted, as she helped put on the wedding dress. Emma looked at the mirror again, trying to convince herself that beauty was not just a matter of appearance but something deeper. I just want to be happy, Lottie, she said, feeling the pressure of the day approaching. Later at the wedding venue, a tense atmosphere hung in the air. Will was surrounded by friends, but his mind was miles away. He looked around, seeing all the smiling faces, but couldn't ignore the anxiety churning inside him. It felt like every person there was waiting for a moment he didn't know how to face. Why am I so nervous? He murmured to Ollie, who was beside him, still grappling with the guilt that consumed him. Because you love her, Will, and you know you have to be honest, Ollie replied, the sincerity in his words making Will feel a knot in his throat. But what if that ruins everything? What do I do if she doesn't forgive me? The devastating doubt crept into Will's mind, and his gaze drifted to a corner of the hall where Emma was preparing to enter. When the moment finally arrived, Will's heart raced. He saw her stunning in her white dress, and her image almost made him forget the truth he carried. But as she approached, reality hit him like a storm. I can't do this. I can't lie to her, he thought, his mind spinning. As Emma walked toward the altar, her eyes shone with hope and love. She had no idea what was going on in Will's mind, which only made her more anxious. He really loves me, doesn't he? She thought, her heart beating with emotion. Deep down, Will knew the moment of truth was drawing near, and the internal struggle between love and deceit was about to explode. He wondered if he could face the pain his revelation might cause. He wanted to be the man Emma deserved, but the shadow of the bet loomed over him like an unwanted shadow. I know this is all wrong, but I can't keep going like this, he whispered to himself, as the sound of wedding bells echoed in the background. Emma, I need to be honest. With that thought, he braced himself to face whatever was to come, aware that on this day his fate was about to be decided. The big day had finally arrived, and the atmosphere in the church was a mix of euphoria and nervousness. Guests were settled, whispering among themselves while soft music filled the air. Will Harper, standing before the altar, felt his heart race like never before. He was dressed in an elegant dark suit, but inside, the indifference he used to display had given way to a storm of emotions. He looked down the aisle, eagerly awaiting Emma's entrance, but he also felt paralyzed by doubt. When Emma appeared, radiant in her wedding dress, Will's eyes filled with tears. Her beauty was undeniable, not just for her appearance but for the light that radiated from her being. She looked like a vision from a fairy tale. The guests fell silent, admiring the scene, but for Will, the world around him faded. He could only think about how he had come to this point and the lie that was about to be exposed. As Emma walked toward him, her heart pulsated with love and fear. He knew that the bet he made with Ollie, his best friend, was the shadow that could ruin everything. And now, at the most important moment of their lives, he found himself on the brink of a devastating decision. As Emma reached the altar, a nervous smile spread across her face. She took Will's hands, and for a moment the world seemed perfect. But as the officiant spoke, Will felt a growing pressure in his chest. The officiant's words seemed distant, as if everything was happening in slow motion. Finally, it was his turn to speak, and he realized he could not continue with the charade. Emma, he began, his voice faltering slightly. Before we go on, there's something I need to tell you. He took a deep breath, looking into her eyes. Emma's smile faded, and concern began to settle on her face. Will, what's happening? She asked, her voice trembling. I'm not who you think I am, he said, his voice choked. I didn't enter this relationship with the best intentions. It was all a bet, a prank between me and Ollie. I promised to marry a common and ugly woman, and I accepted. The words came out as a whisper, yet each syllable seemed to echo in the silent church. Emma's expression quickly shifted from love to shock and disillusionment. She stepped away from him, her hands falling limply as if he had struck her. What are you saying, Will? She asked, her voice now filled with disbelief. Were you just playing with me? Was this all just a joke? No, that's not how I want you to see this, he tried to explain, his heart shattering. I didn't expect to fall in love with you. I was an idiot, and this should never have happened. I truly love you, Emma. Love? Is that what you call love? Emma replied, her voice choked with pain. You deceived me, Will. How can I believe you now? How can I trust you if all this started as a bet? Will looked at the guests, all in shock, and saw Ollie, who was as pale as a ghost, guilt written all over his face. He knew the situation was spiraling out of control, and Emma's anguish hit him like a punch to the gut. Emma, I didn't want this to happen, Will said, his voice barely audible. I can't change the past, but I can try to be the man you deserve. Please, give me a chance to prove that. At that moment, Ollie stood up, regret etched on his face. Emma, he began, his voice firm. I'm sorry for putting Will in this situation. I thought it was just a prank, but it went way beyond what I imagined. You deserve the best, and I should never have played with your feelings. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone was holding their breath, anxious for Emma's response as she looked from Will to Ollie and back to Will. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I need some time, she said before walking away, her heart in tatters, leaving Will with the devastating truth he had revealed. The ceremony was underway, with the guests nervously awaiting the exchange of vows between Will and Emma. The afternoon sun illuminated the altar, where Will stood, his heart racing. He felt the weight of expectation, but the burden of truth he carried was even more overwhelming. Looking at Emma, dressed as a bride and radiant, his mind was filled with doubts. She was the woman he loved, not merely the conquest that his bet represented. All eyes turned to Will when he began to speak. Emma, his voice trembled. I need to be honest with you and everyone here. I made a bet with my best friend. A murmur swept through the crowd, and Emma's face went pale. The goal was to marry you, not for love, but to prove a point. I didn't think it would become real. Emma stepped back, tears in her eyes, and the look of despair on her face broke Will's heart. How could you? She whispered, almost voiceless. How could you turn what we have into just a bet? It was supposed to be special, Will. For us. The guests fell silent, the tension in the air palpable, as Lottie, standing beside Emma, held her friend's hand, trying to convey support amid the emotional storm. I know I was wrong, Emma, but what I feel for you is real. I didn't know I could care so much about someone. The bet was a stupid idea, an attempt to prove something that no longer matters to me. Will took a step forward, his voice rising, asking for everyone's attention. I don't want to just win a bet. I want you. I want to spend my life with you. Emma looked at him, confusion mingled with pain in her eyes. And if this is just a game for you, how can I trust that your feelings are real? The vulnerability in her voice resonated among the guests, many sharing looks of compassion, while others looked at Will with disappointment. You're right, and I don't have the right to ask for your trust right now, Will replied, his voice softer but filled with emotion. But I'm here, in front of you, willing to fight for you. The bet was a mistake, but the love I discovered for you is genuine. Emma, I'm not the same man who accepted that challenge. You changed me. Murmurs intensified among the guests, and Ollie, standing next to Will, felt the tension rising. He realized he had caused damage that couldn't be easily repaired, and the pain he saw on Emma's face hit him hard. Emma, I didn't know it was going to unfold like this. I just wanted to see Will out of his comfort zone. He tried to justify, but his voice faltered. You don't understand, Ollie, Emma replied, still full of emotion. He made me believe we were something more, that it was real. And now here I am, at an altar, hearing that I was just a bet. Lottie, sensing the gravity of the moment, intervened. Emma, you don't have to decide right now. What Will did was terrible, and I'm not defending that, but maybe it's time to hear what he really feels. You know Will, and you know he can be a better man. Don't let this lie define what you've built together. Emma looked at Lottie, and then at Will, who stood there, vulnerable, eyes filled with regret. The silence stretched, and everyone awaited her response. She wanted to believe him, but the wound was still fresh and bleeding. What everyone was waiting for was the answer that could determine their future. Emma took a deep breath, words caught in her throat, as hopeful glances turned toward her. Emma stood at the altar, her white dress contrasting with the pallor of her face. Everyone's eyes were on her, but her world seemed to shrink down to a single point, the sharp pain in her chest, where the love she had built with Will was being shattered. His words echoed in her mind, each syllable a stab, each revelation another layer of betrayal. What should have been the happiest day of her life had turned into a scene of disillusionment and confusion. Emma, please, listen to me. Will's voice cut through the tense silence that settled in the church. He stepped closer to her, his eyes filled with genuine desperation that made her hesitate. I know I'm here for reasons you could never imagine, but what I feel for you is real. Bet or not, my heart belongs to you. She looked at him, tears streaming down her face. How can you say that, Will? How can I trust you now? You started all of this as a game. To you, I was just a bet. I'm an idiot, he admitted, his voice choked. In the beginning, yes. I didn't see beyond the challenge, but that changed. I changed. I don't want to lose you over something so stupid. He took a deep breath, trying to muster the courage. The truth is that I fell in love with you, Emma. And saying this now, here, is the hardest thing I've ever done. You are worth more than any bet. The murmurs among the guests grew louder, but Emma was focused on Will's eyes, trying to find the sincerity he claimed to have. What if I can't forget this? What if I can't trust you again? What if this always stands between us? Her voice trembled, revealing the internal struggle she faced. I understand, Will replied, his expression softening as he recognized her pain. And I don't expect you to forgive me immediately, but I want to work on this. I want to show you that I am worthy of your love. If you give me a chance, I promise I will prove that I'm not the same person I was before. Emma looked at Lottie, who stood beside her, eyes full of concern. Her friend seemed torn between supporting Emma and understanding Will's transformation. The tension in the air was palpable, and Emma knew that the decision she was about to make would change their lives forever. Emma began, hesitating as the weight of the decision loomed over her. I want to believe in you, but I can't just ignore what happened. Will, if we continue, there will need to be some changes. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, he said, determination unmistakable in his voice. I promise to be honest, and I commit to working on our relationship one day at a time. If you allow me, I will fight to earn your trust again. You have to understand that this will take time, Emma warned, her voice firm but softened by vulnerability. I can't just forget that this all started as a game, but I am willing to try, if you are committed to being truthful with me. I will be, Will assured, emotion nearly spilling over. I just want you, Emma, not as a prize, but as the woman I truly love. A deep silence settled as all eyes fixed on the two of them. Emma felt the pressure but also a wave of hope. She didn't want to lose what they had built even amidst the pain. Then let's start fresh, Emma said, her heart racing. If you really want this, let's do things the right way. Will smiled, relief reflected on his face. Thank you, Emma. I won't let you down. She nodded, and a new understanding began to blossom between them. The path ahead would be filled with challenges, but both were willing to face them together, with honesty and courage. Love, after all, was a journey, and they were ready to take the next step. Months passed since the tumultuous wedding ceremony, and Emma and Will's lives had taken an unexpected yet glorious turn. The sun shone brightly over London, mirroring the new phase they were living. Emma was about to open her own restaurant, a dream she had nurtured since childhood, and Will was by her side, supporting every step of the way with a dedication that almost made her forget their troubled past. In the kitchen of the new restaurant, a cozy and modern space adorned with photos of vibrant dishes and smiling customers, Emma was in her element. Dressed in a white apron with her hair tied up in a messy bun, she was organizing the final details before the grand opening. The aroma of fresh herbs and spices wafted through the air, creating an atmosphere of anticipation and excitement. "We need more parsley, Will," Emma shouted, a smile on her face as she looked at him, who was trying to help in the kitchen but clearly lacked the necessary experience. "Right, chef," Will replied, holding a handful of parsley and nearly knocking over a bottle of olive oil in the process. "Any chance I can get credit for this simple task?" Emma laughed, her smile lighting up the room. "You can consider yourself an apprentice, but you still need more practice if you want to become a real chef." He approached her, looking at her with admiration. "What you've done here is amazing, Emma. You deserve every second of this success." "Thank you, Will. But this only happened because you believed in me from the start. I wouldn't have made it this far without your support." As they spoke, Lottie and Ollie entered the restaurant, bringing an exuberant energy that further filled the space. The two looked radiant, ready to celebrate the opening. "What are we missing here?" Ollie asked, looking curious. "I think I smell the best dish in London." "We're getting ready for the opening, Ollie, and please don't touch anything that isn't food," Emma replied, winking at him. "Promise from a friend." Ollie grinned, raising his hands in surrender. "But how are you? Nervous?" A flicker of anxiety crossed Emma's face. "A little. This is my dream," and I just want everything to go well. You're going to crush it, Emma, Lottie said, taking her friend's hand and holding it firmly. Just remember that you're already a success. This is just the beginning. As the opening time drew near, a crowd began to gather outside, eager to see what Emma had created. Will, sensing the growing energy, turned to her and said, "Look at how many people came to support you. This is just proof that your talent really stands out." Emma took a deep breath, her eyes shining with emotion. "I'm so grateful to have you by my side, Will. You've taught me so much about love and trust." With a smile, Will replied, "And you've shown me that true beauty lies in authenticity. I've learned to love not just who you are, but also who I am next to you." Finally, the restaurant doors swung open, and the first customers entered, bringing with them an air of expectation and joy. Emma positioned herself at the front of the restaurant, already smiling, ready to welcome everyone. "Welcome to my restaurant," she exclaimed, her voice vibrant with energy. "Today we're here to celebrate not just food, but the connection between people. I hope everyone feels at home." As the guests settled in, Will watched Emma with a glimmer in his eyes, realizing how much she had transformed and flourished. He approached her, and in an intimate moment whispered, "You're amazing, you know that?" Emma looked at him, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "True beauty lies in authenticity," she repeated, her smile radiating happiness. And so, amid laughter, aromas, and the joy of friends around them, Emma and Will began a new chapter in their lives, a story that promised to be full of love, challenges, and the certainty that together they could face anything. We have reached the end of this heartfelt story. If you enjoyed this and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Right now, there's a playlist of videos on your screen. If you want to keep watching these touching stories, just click on it and you'll be all set. And now, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from and leave a like to support our work. Here's a sincere question. Do you agree with what happened in the story? We want to hear your opinion. Until the next video.